This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
He's Greg, I'm Nick. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the app today. Use that promo code for us, CLNS, for a first deposit match up to $100. And of course, as we always say, do us a favor. If you like the pod, you want to support it, go over to Prize Picks and sign up using that code CLNS. All right, Greg, earlier today, Eliot Wolf met with the media, his pre-draft press conference. Before I ask you a question, I know you and I have to be on the same page with this. I urge the Patriots to use a microphone to each media member that is in that room when they have a question. Because, Greg, I will give you credit. You are one of the only cats in that room that I could hear today watching this thing. You have enough bass in the voice, and you up the ante. A lot of people, they're whispering and everything.
Hello.
So can we please get a microphone to the media?
Yeah, I mean,
just,
I got to tell you, Nick,
brutal.
yeah, I got to tell you that, they moved us into new media room digs, I want to say about a year ago. And, it's great for the most part. I will tell you, like, those press conference settings, and I've been trying to think of, like, what they can do to alleviate it. I mean, first of all, they need to bump up the microphone level, like even just for the speaker, like Eliot Wolf today, like in the room, because like I'm trying to record and like I have this transcription thing app called Otter that I use, and like it's hard to pick up in there. And I you weren't the only media member that like texted me like, hey, what was this question about? Like what was this answer in response to? And like even in that room, like if you're not one of the eager beavers, and let's just state it out, I am not one of the early arrivers for anything. Okay. That's just, look, I am who I am. Okay. And I'm 50 now and it ain't changing. But, so I'm not one of these guys. Giardi, I will say, when he's there, he wasn't there today because he's off doing college visits with the family. But Giardi is one of these, like, he's in the front row. Like, he's an early riser. He's an early bird. But like it's hard not only to hear the questions, but to like hear, for them to see you, to get like within the, like it's tough. But I agree. I think a good first step would be, and like let's just, because you have different levels, like Tom Curran's up on the front left, I'm in the back right, Phil Perry's in the front with next to Reese, and like when those guys ask questions, like I can't even hear their questions and I'm in the room. And so we might as well go to like sort of the post-game press conference where it's like, raise your hand, we'll give you the microphone type of thing, because I think it would be more productive for everybody.
Yeah, so hopefully Stacey James, I know that's probably not his department, but the audio technical people there, we can fix this. All right. Can we also first acknowledge this about Wolf? His job today, Greg, is not to tell the truth, correct?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say after his 20 minutes after talking with us that I think he viewed his job as clouding as much as possible the Patriots' interest, and also opening everything up for a trade that somebody might that somebody might want to come up and trade because they're not sure what direction the Patriots are going to go in. Is it Daniels? Is it May? Is it JJ McCarthy? Are they going to trade down? Like, is somebody going to jump and go to the Patriots and take the quarterback that they want? So, yeah, I will say, having known Eliot over the years, I don't think he's somebody that, in his answers, that you think he might be deceptive. I think there's a lot of truth in it. Like, he doesn't like to straight out lie, but I do think that Eliot, I've been very impressed with the confidence that he has operated in. It seems like as we get closer to the day of draft day, and maybe it's because like a lot of the hay's in the barn at this point, and he even talked about that they've gone through the different scenarios, that they pretty much know what they're going to do at 3, depending on what Washington does. Like, I think he's extremely confident in his plan, their scouting, their preparedness for this draft going forward.
All right, so let's run through some of the questions I had for you after this press conference, and then we've got some Bedard thoughts off of some of the reporting that he's done or is in the middle of doing. Let's first start with this. Decision makers jumped out to me that Wolf said it's going to be him, Gerard Mayo, Matt Groh, and then depending on which prospect they're talking about, offense, defense, the coordinators will also get involved. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, in a sense. I think that with the coordinators being involved, I think that's probably after the first day, more of a second and third day thing where they might be getting close on a pick. Hey, here's what we're thinking about these guys. Like, which one do you prefer? Which one do you need? Like, say, we're talking about Alex Van Pelt in the offense. Like, say, hey, these are the guys that we have highest rated on the board. We're coming up in 5 picks. Like, which guy do you think that we need that would be the most help for you right away? I don't think that will be, certainly those conversations are going to take place in the lead up here to the draft about 3, possibly trading up from 34 or sticking at 34. It does make sense to me.
No mention of the Krafts. Was that intentional? Or we're really just looking at the Krafts being involved, if they are involved in this decision-making process, only at pick 3 and really nothing else?
I think, and this is just my impression, nobody's told me this, my impression is that, especially in light of recent news that we will get to later, and this also goes along with, remember about the published reports that came out right before Gerard Mayo was named head coach and about Jonathan Kraft's influence and all that. And all of a sudden, Jonathan Kraft went from being announced to being on the dais with his dad and Gerard Mayo to him not being there and having too much business to take care of with Kraft World. And so I think my read on it, Nick, was that there's a concerted effort to keep them out of much of anything, much discussion about the draft, the team, personnel, things like that. I think there's a concerted effort going on to keep the Krafts out of it.
So, got a question about an offensive player. Sorry, I got thrown off because I just saw that account, ML Football, which tweets a lot of stuff out there. AJ Brown has started to follow Jacoby Brissett and KJ Osborne on Instagram. So there you go. But when it comes to an offensive player, obviously Mayo has a large voice in the room. But if it's an offensive player, you bring in Alex Van Pelt. Does Mayo kind of acquiesce to Van Pelt and say, hey, that's your world? Or the head coach can step over the offensive coordinator in that situation and say, look, I understand what you're saying, Alex, but I'm the guy who's running the program. I lean more towards this guy, so that's where we're going.
I think Gerard Mayo will do a good job of listening to people and soliciting information. But at the end of the day, I think Gerard Mayo, and this could end up being his detriment as Patriots head coach, at least early on in his career. I think he has a steadfast belief in his own opinions and his own, how do I want to put this? His own ability to do the job, his own performance level. So I think he might say the right things, but I think really in his mind he's thinking, that's okay. I know what I'm doing. I've been waiting for this. I could have been a head coach 5 years ago. As soon as I got into the league, I'm ready to do this. This is my vision for the football team.
So what you're saying, Greg, is that Gerard Mayo is a very confident fella.
Yes, I would say that. And I would say the same thing about Eliot Wolf. Like I said earlier, one of my early impressions of Eliot, not only today, but I've seen him in some other settings, from the combine to, some other things. He has this look on his face like the cat that caught the canary. Like he's He's ready. I think both of these guys, I think they feel like they're ready for this, and they think that they are going to knock it out of the park. Now, often reality in the NFL is much different, so we'll have to see.
All right. So Wolf said he feels that the current roster could support a rookie quarterback during the press conference. Do you agree with that?
I don't disagree with that. Totally. Now, look, let's be honest. The left tackle position, at least, is a huge gaping void on this team. And we heard him say that if the season started today, it would be Okorafor at left tackle, and they think he can do a representative job. But I agree with his assessment, and I think we've talked about it sort of over the course of the offseason. When a bunch of other people are throwing temper tantrums about the Patriots' like lack of moves and not burning cash and not doing trades, that the Patriots could have done that. Why didn't they do that? I think that, and I only feel better about my opinion that Eliot Wolf looked at this, and probably Gerard Mayo, and said this was not a 4-win team. That there are a lot of good pieces on this team, and when you talk about a really good defense that's going to get Gonzalez back, that's going to get Matthew Judon back in most respects, I assume they're going to do something about his contract at some point in time. I think that, and then the offensive line is representative. I think the weapons are representative. I think getting Hunter Henry back was big. They're going to have a professional quarterback, whether that's Brissett or somebody else, the third overall pick, if they're ready to go. They have a good running game. Like I agree with him. I don't think this is like it's a complete, a lot of people just look at last year and they're just like, oh, well, they haven't really changed much, so they're going to suck again. I don't believe that. And here's another big thing, Nick, is, and I didn't really realize this till somebody pointed this out to me recently, that in the last 5 years, the Patriots have had 5 different offensive line coaches in all essence. And, from Scar to the guy who went with McDaniels, I forget what his name is.
Brasillo?
Yeah, Carm Brasillo.
Ratillo.
Yeah. And then to Matt Patricia and Billy Yates, and then Clem to whatever the hell they had last year. Like, again, people know how I feel about offensive lines. And just like if Peters and Kugler, the 2 offensive line coaches, are legit, that can make a huge improvement on this team. So in general, like, is it perfect? No. Do I think it's going to be a train wreck for a rookie quarterback? No, I don't.
Wolf said he feels people are underestimating the tackle spot and wide receiver spot as far as the guys they have on this team. Do you think we're underestimating them, or do you think that Wolf's point today, because he kept saying we have NFL players, is just, look, these guys can play. They might not be great. They might not be top tier, and we'll get to the receiver thing in a minute. But do you think it was, proper for Wolf to say, because I think it was Karen Garigian who asked him if people are underestimating what they have, and he said yes.
The first thing I thought of when he said, like, we have NFL receivers and we have NFL tight ends and NFL running backs, I just thought of Bill Belichick saying, like, Mac Jones can play quarterback in the NFL. Like, it was, but like, that's just me being the cynic and being an a-hole. That's all I could think of. I mean, I think Wolf is correct. Is it top line? No. Is it a disaster? No. But I think that they view Hunter Henry as like the top tight end that was available. They view Michael Winning as the top right tackle that was available. They brought him back. Ramondre Stevenson will probably get an extension at some point. He's really good. They really feel really good about Antonio Gibson. There's a lot to sort out at the 2 guards and obviously left tackle. But I think in their mind, if they get a quarterback at 3, they get an offensive tackle at some point. And I don't know about you, Nick, but the discussion today about trading for a wide receiver, It sure seems like you asked me, I think last podcast, what my percentage was on them trading for a wide receiver at some point, probably likely after the draft, so you can get into future picks trading those instead of this year. And I said 52%. I might be up to 58, 59%. So, things, I think they're confident that things are going to look a lot different in about a month or two.
We talked about a little bit Okorafor, the left tackle. He said if the season started today, and he made a joke that he always kind of picks on people who say that if the season started today, because it doesn't start today. I think we'll get a real feel about their offensive line during the draft and whether or not they believe Okorafor could be that starting left tackle. But I want to move on to receiver. He said this, a couple things before we get to the wide receiver trade. And what he specifically said, you just kind of hinted towards it. But first, he was asked about the X role. And he said, I think we have players that can line up and play at X. Do we have players that on a 3-by-1 beat the backside coverage every single time? I'm not sure we have that just yet. But we certainly have good receivers. And then he went on to say, Osborne could play all three positions. Yep. Your read on that answer?
I thought it was hugely accurate. And I'm pretty sure I saw Evan Lazar probably pass out from the discussion about 3-by-1 sets and all that stuff. I think I had to wake up Evan. After that, he might have blacked out. But yeah, I mean that it just shows you that Eliot's not an idiot, and like he wants to provide information. And I think that's hugely accurate. I mean, you look at it, and if the Patriots go out there with one back and 4 wide receivers, I think between Osborne, Pop, and Kendrick Bourne, should he be healthy, those are 3 pretty good options. And none of them are top line or anything like that. But all of a sudden, at the boundary, if you get like who was the guy you just mentioned about the ML football?
A.J. Brown.
You get A.J. Brown or Cortland Sutton or somebody like that, and then you draft a guy to develop to be like sort of the next guy or to take the place of somebody else in that 3-man group, all of a sudden the Patriots look a lot different. And, if you're asking me right now, I think that's the plan.
Now, as far as the pursuing a wide receiver via trade, he said, we've had conversation with teams about different scenarios, not just at wide receiver, but other positions. It's something we'd be open to. So, again, you felt a little bit more confident in them going after a veteran wide receiver after today. Yeah,
I did. And I've sort of been there. I've been ridiculed for it, even though, every few off, I still, whether it was the onset of free agency or a trade, like I've been pretty steadfast that I believe at some point the Patriots will trade for a number 1 wide receiver. And it's not just things that I've heard. And this is where I sort of punch back at Felger, when he's saying like, he does his finger wag thing where he's just like, they're never going to pay for a number 1 wide receiver. Like, and I'm just like, dude, they just offered Calvin Ridley $22 million a year. And he's not even a number 1 wide receiver. Like, what are you talking about? So, like, their pursuit of Calvin Ridley should be a big billboard to everybody that says they looked at their roster, they looked what's in the draft, and they said the quickest way for us to get competitive is to bring in a dangerous outside receiver that sort of makes everything better. And it's not to say you can't get in the draft. Certainly, if you draft one at 3, you're getting one. But that, I think they are on the prowl for that, and they are waiting and they are laying in wait and have been, look, they $22 million for Calvin Ridley. He didn't take it for whatever reason. And now I think they're like, okay, well, now the price tag might come down on some people after the draft when other draft receivers are in these programs and things like that. And I think they are ready to pounce if they can.
I'm so glad you said that thing about Ridley, because I've said that same thing to myself watching certain programming over the last couple of weeks. I want to put my head through a wall. I'm like, did they not just offer that? Did they not just offer Ridley $40 million guaranteed? Did I dream that? Was that something that actually happened in reality? I also enjoyed Eliot Wolf's answer today when he was asked what happened with Ridley. He's like, yeah, another team offered more money. That's a short but sweet. He didn't go into the girlfriend thing or wife thing like Robert did.
Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less in 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball and hockey's postseason, which is coming up. I can't wait. I know Nick is going to be freaking geeked up for all that stuff. That's for sure. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into 1,000 with basketball, hockey, baseball entries today on Prize Pick, America's #1 fantasy sports app. This week on Prize Picks, I'm selecting Jaylen Brown for more than 25 points, David Pastrnak for 2 goals or more, Tyler O'Neill, the big thumper, for 2+ home runs this week, and Kenley Jansen for 2 saves. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy at Prize Picks.
Let's get to some of your thoughts, Greg, out of some reporting that you've done, and you're in the middle of reporting stuff, of course, as we're now about a week away from the draft. What are the chances that a team will offer a trade that you think would make the Pats move off of the 3 spot?
Not very good. And I don't think that the Patriots expect one. I think they are going full bore ahead with the thought that they are going to stick at 3. They've already gamed the situations where if the Commanders take Jaden Daniels, if the Commanders take Drake May, if they take JJ McCarthy, what are we going to do? The feeling is, and I also got this talking to some, other NFL executives, that they just think that the Patriots at 3, that's too high for people to. And again, this goes back to, when you have 3 or 4 or 5 quarterbacks that could go in the top 10, there's a premium on those picks that you have to get those teams out of the spot. So it's not only just number 3, it's number 3 plus the tax that it's going to be a quarterback that, for a quarterback needy team to move out of a spot where they can get a quarterback. I think the feeling is that there's very little chance that somebody's going to offer them, is going to blow them away, which is what they're going to have to do to move into that spot.
You touched on this a little bit earlier, but I want to dive deeper if we can. The Patriots, do they already know who they're picking depending on what Washington does at 2?
My sense is, and I think Eliot Wolf answered it where I forget the way he answered it, but he basically said, I think he was asked, where are you guys, to your final decision on the quarterback? He said, we're not quite there yet, but soon. From what I understand, they know what they're doing. That they have, it's not that difficult. I mean, because Caleb Williams is going 1, and now it's just a process of elimination where you're just I think that, it might not completely be done because, they just got done with 30 visits and, now they put Penix brought him in as well. But, they just had, Daniels and McCarthy in recently. They had May in. So now probably in the past couple days or in the next couple days, they formally, do it. But I think in terms of, do I think Eliot Wolf knows what he's going to do or what he wants to do at 3? Yeah, I think he knows.
He also said today he'd feel comfortable picking any of the top quarterbacks at 3. Do you believe him?
I do not. No. I think this is more what you sort of opened the show with. I think this is more sort of lying, clouding judgment, all that stuff. I think, and this also goes to the column that I wrote over the weekend where, the person that I talked to said, you don't go into the draft saying there's 5 or 6 guys that we'd be happy with. I don't think that's the case at all. I think, it's a 3-person board for them with Williams, and then how does it go? And then if I think they'd be happy with, in my opinion, I think they'd be happy with Daniels or May, and I think it would be on their board. It would be Daniels and then May, and then if for some reason they're not there, they might be into like a Penix or something like that. If somebody does come up and offer them a ridiculous package for number 3, then I think they have that guy in mind who they would want, perhaps trade back up and that sort of thing, like we talked about in the last podcast. But no, I don't believe. Well, I mean, I don't believe his talk about the 5 or 6 quarterbacks. Like, I do think that they have a 3-person board and they're confident in that.
Some of the smoke around JJ McCarthy has been dying down the last few days. Is he still in the conversation, you think, at number 3?
I'll put it this way. I can't tell you if he's legitimately in the mix for the Patriots at number 3, but I'll say that the Patriots want us to believe that he is in the mix for number 3. And again, this is sort of where I was when, Tom Curran, Michael Hawley, Chris Gasper, who's back, almost all of them have backtracked. Scott Zolak, all these people who have pretty strong connections to people in the Patriot organization, all of a sudden came out at the same time, and they're just like, JJ McCarthy is like in play, and now they're backtracking a little bit. Like I said, I've been told it's legitimate. I don't know whether to believe it's legitimate.
Why would they want people to believe that they're really interested in McCarthy? Is it trying to build the value of the 3 pick because just in case their guy goes number 2? Is it because they want to try to make Washington believe that McCarthy is a little bit better than he really is and maybe get Washington to bite? Why would you do that, Greg? What do you think?
I think it's all of the above, but I do think they're just I think they know somebody, whether it's Minnesota or the Giants, Denver, I don't know. I think they believe that some teams love JJ McCarthy. And I think we've heard some reporting on this from some national guys that, JJ McCarthy is like number 1 on the board of some teams. And I think that they are trying to draw those people out, smoke them out to come up for the 3 pick. And so they are talking up JJ McCarthy big time at one Patriot place. And again, I don't know whether it's legitimate or not.
Are they looking for great, or are they looking for just good enough at 3?
I thought that they are looking for great, that which is part of the reason has led me to they need to go Drake May. If Washington goes Jaden Daniels, go Drake May, because the upside to Drake May is immense. And you're talking probably a little bit notch below Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, like that type of guy. Whereas JJ McCarthy, I think his ceiling is, I don't know, Kirk Cousins, something like that. But from what somebody explained to me the other day was that the NFL has changed a little bit, and I'll be interested to hear what you have to say about this, Nick, and whether you believe this as well. That the NFL has changed a bit from, let's say, Ron Wolf's day, when, it was Brett Favre, it was, Joe Montana, it was the NFL was ruled by great quarterbacks. There is now a belief, and you could possibly look at some teams like San Francisco and other teams that you can win in today's NFL as opposed to yesteryear with a good quarterback. I don't subscribe to that. I don't know how you feel about it.
I think you can win with a good quarterback if everything else is built very, very well. You need to hit on a bunch of different players a bunch of different ways like San Francisco has. I mean, if you can hit on a George Kittle in the 5th round and a Warner and a number of the guys that they have hit on in the draft, then yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You have to draft unbelievably well for the most part. You've got to hit on the Deebo Samuels. You've got to hit on the Brandon Ayuks. And look, San Francisco did swing and miss on some big picks. Okay, Trey Lance, number 1. But you have to hit on a lot of different areas to have that kind of team. But I would also say this, Greg. Even if you do that, the path to a championship is still much easier with great at quarterback, not good enough. And we just saw that play out in the most recent Super Bowl. We just saw that in February. Brock Purdy, it's not that they lost the game because of Brock Purdy, but Purdy could not win the game for the 49ers. And the Chiefs played like crap for 3 quarters. Mahomes turns it on, and they end up winning that game. That's because of Mahomes' greatness. You go back to the first time it was San Francisco, Kansas City. San Francisco couldn't shut the door because Jimmy Garoppolo missed a throw in the 4th quarter to a guy who was wide-ass open going downfield that would have been 6. So, again, it wasn't that Jimmy necessarily lost the game for them, but he did not win the game for them. He gave them enough of a margin for Patrick Mahomes to slide in with his greatness and win. So, if you talk about competing, if you talk about making the playoffs, and if everything goes right, yes. But we're talking about margin of error for me. And when you have greatness at that position, the margin for error is so much wider and larger for that football team.
I completely agree with you, especially when you look at it as, in the context of just the AFC. I mean, provided Aaron Rodgers is healthy this year, like you're going to have to beat, just in your own division, Aaron Rodgers and Josh Allen. And you can't do that with you need, like you said, you need like a wagon, like the San Francisco 49ers around Brock Purdy to even have a chance to compete. You also have to go through, Burrow, and you have to go through Mahomes, and you're probably going to have to go through Justin Herbert with Jim Harbaugh now. And, just to me, an illustration of that is, it's okay. You can do that in theory. Look at the Dolphins in Tua. Like, if they're going to try to break through here and get to an AFC championship game, let alone a Super Bowl, like you're going to need to put Tua to play lights out against Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, like all these people. And do you really think Tua can do that? I don't.
It's also about consistently contending, right? Like so much has to go your way to win a Super Bowl with a quarterback like that because you have to face the greatness that Greg just brought up. Consistently contending, that's very difficult to pull off. The easiest way to consistently be in the conversation, the top 4 or 5 teams, is having one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So I would disagree with that idea for all of those reasons. What have you heard about a possible Patriots misinformation campaign?
I think we're in the midst of it. I think that, from what I understand, the Patriots are very happy that no one has any idea what they're going to do at number 3. I think, and so to me, that has been part of a plan. How much is Gerard Mayo involved? How much was he involved at the league meetings? How much is he involved behind the scenes now with sort of his media connections and stuff like that? I think it's real, and we really have no frame of reference with this. We have zero frame of reference with this new crew with Mayo and Wolf. And so we're not really going to know anything. How much was BS? How much was smoke? How much was real until the draft's over? And, we can see what they did.
I go back to, are there any common themes over the last several weeks going back to the Combine? And to me, it's been really, really quiet around Drake May since the Combine. Immediately following the Combine, it was, he impressed them a lot. He was very impressive in those interviews. And then things just went quiet for the most part around May. I'm not talking about, people mocking Drake May to the Patriots at 3, like many, 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 many have. I'm talking about reports of they love the guy, May's the pick. I get the feeling, I'm going to stand by this until next week unless something crazy pops up. I get the feeling the McCarthy smoke was all trying to, make sure and solidify Drake May sitting there at 3. I think May's their guy. I think Drake May's their guy. And I could be dead ass wrong, but there's just so much has been said. You had that weird Daniels thing. He wants to play in New England and not Washington report come out. Just seems like in McCarthy, it was just nonstop McCarthy for 2 or 3 weeks. Just feels like it's made of me. All right, we got a couple more things to hit before we say goodbye this week. This episode, though, before we get to those, brought to you by Prize Picks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the app today. Use the code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Also, check out Greg, Mike Giardi and company at BSJ, $50 for the year. And now you got the Bruins. Sounds like it's going to be Saturday night against Toronto. You've got the Celtics on Sunday afternoon. Corrales will be, covering those guys. So a lot going on. Red Sox keep playing David Hamilton at shortstop for some reason. A lot is going on. All right, let's get to this ESPN report that came out. Everybody was talking about it yesterday. Another Bill Belichick column. I just want, before we get into the Robert Kraft piece, because I saw you write about Crafty yesterday, little critical of the owner. But before we get to that, Greg, just kind of big picture thoughts from the story. And let me just first set it up here. We're talking about Jeremy Fowler. We're talking about Van Natta. We're talking about Wickersham. Those are 3 of the most legitimate, well-sourced journalists that ESPN has on their payroll. So those were the 3 guys who wrote this. Just your big picture, 30,000-foot view of that story.
Yeah, first of all, I was a little bit surprised that Fowler got a byline on this. This isn't normally his bag, but he must have gotten some good information that was part of the article. Because I put Seth and Don in a separate category. I mean, they're just, and I think even Jeremy would admit that. I mean, those guys are just, they're tremendous. I had dinner with them at the league meetings, and it sure was a good time. Of course, they didn't even hint to me that they were working on this, so thanks for that, guys. But so basically, my overarching opinion was some of the specifics was fantastic in this article, but I do think a lot of this just basically like confirmed a lot of like what I've reported, what we've talked about here on the podcast, that, I thought that, Belichick, I was told Belichick thought he had the Falcons job in the bag. If not when he had that press conference, the day of the press conference with Robert Kraft, but pretty soon thereafter, that he thought that was wrapped up. He was in a good space. And I think he was shocked that he didn't get the job. I think that, the reasoning behind some of the other teams not pursuing Belichick was interesting and laughable, especially like Carolina Panthers. How Dave Tepper likes to question his head coach with analytics and didn't think he would be able to do that with Belichick. I found it fascinating that Magic Johnson was beating the drum for Belichick with the Commanders.
Yeah.
I think that's a nice compliment for Bill, considering, the head coaches, Pat Riley, and others that Magic has been around. And he knows greatness, of course, and he knows what it takes to win a championship. And sometimes that can be an a-hole head coach. And so I thought that was a feather in Bill's cap. But of course, the biggest bombshell was that, and let's also point out that the Patriots, through Stacey James, strenuously objected to the characterization, I can't speak suddenly, that Robert Kraft basically torpedoed Bill's chances at getting the Falcons job because he talked crap about him to Brad Blank. And, and the other thing I wanted to point out that also backed up our reporting is that I've been saying all along that keep an eye on Bill to the Eagles after the season. It basically sounds like it's Eagles or Cowboys or bust for Bill. But, of course, the Kraft stuff was the most explosive in the story.
A couple things from Stacey James before we talk about Kraft. I do love he steadfastly denies Robert steadfastly denies. He doesn't just deny it; he steadfastly denies it. Okay, so that's a little extra emphasis. Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
I steadfastly deny. Is that how it works?
And then the other part, though, too. It's so funny because Stacy's like, "Well, did Kraft order the code red on Belichick in January? No, he didn't. But I will acknowledge that he might have done so before January." Oh, okay. Okay. So maybe the specific phone calls that we're talking about steadfastly deny. But hey, man, before January, he also said that Kraft had no recollection of doing that, which is I misremembered or I can't remember. I don't recall. When you say that, my shit detectors pop up immediately. I don't, I have no recollection of it. Oh, so you could have done it. You just don't recollect it. And then, well, he didn't do it when they're saying he did it. But hey, James did acknowledge Kraft might have done so prior to January. So maybe right before Christmas, Kraft ordered the code red. Yeah. But it wasn't in January, damn it.
That'd be like me if like you came to me and it's like, Greg, were you talking crap about me and my performance on the podcast? Well, maybe during the season I might have been frustrated with you and might have voiced that, but I can't really remember if I did that. So,
yeah, I don't know. It brought me back to Tom Curran when he said, after the Colts game, the Krafts had made up their mind. Like I could see, I could visualize Kraft on the phone during the week talking to Arthur Blank at some point, being like, I'm sick of this guy. This guy I don't trust him. He sucks. I'm done with him. But he didn't say it in January, but he couldn't go back on his word because Blank was like, I remember what you said during the season, Robert, when you were pissed. Is that true? Mm-hmm. I would also say this before we get to Kraft. How about the assistant coaches catching strays? The line in there that Belichick told Blank that they're more soldiers than generals. If you're like Matt Patricia or Josh McDaniels and you read that, you're like, Bill, what the hell, man? Why are you throwing me under the bus?
Yeah, I completely agree. And if I were in one of those guys' shoes, I would be like, well, if you weren't such a dick all the time and you actually like explained to us things and actually like, developed coaches like, other great coaches have like, Mike Shanahan or Bill Walsh who took, developing talent, very seriously, Mike Holmgren in Green Bay, like all those guys like viewed like part of their job was to develop people that they could go out and have like a successful tree and stuff like that. Instead, Bill, you just crapped on us. You treated us like fungus, like, you kept us in the dark and fed us shit. And like, look what happened.
All right, let's get to Robert Kraft. You're pretty critical of Robert yesterday when you wrote about this column at ESPN. Why were you so critical, Greg?
Because I'm sick of it. I'm sick of like all this bickering back and forth, the neediness, the want, the egos, like all this stuff. Like, it's like, and I think Kraft's on like a huge L. Like and I even think Bill Simmons tweeted this today. Like, it's been like a year and I completely agree with him. I'm trying to find out, exactly where I wrote this. Oh, I was like, starting with, first of all, they entertain. This was a shock to me in this, because I always, and this is another piece of my reporting that some people have crapped on that didn't believe. When I said at the end of last year, it's not assured that Bill's back. And again, they report, but this time it's Robert Kraft wanted to fire Bill Belichick, but Jonathan Kraft saved the job. I'm pretty sure Wickersham and those guys, or Wickersham, when he wrote sort of the end of days for Bill Belichick, reported the opposite, that it was Jonathan who wanted to shit can Bill, but Robert kept him out of it. But, you don't do that. You bring in the Billy O'Brien thing. You do the Gerard Mayo contract language that basically kneecapped Belichick's authority inside the building, that basically led to a dysfunctional season that was a complete outlier from any other time in Belichick's career here or otherwise, where, they underperformed where they were. And to me, that had to do with the dysfunction on the coaching staff, which to me was a direct result of Gerard's Mayo contract. They rushed out the dynasty in an obvious attempt for Kraft's Hall of Fame chances to improve it. It was bad timing. I railed against it after the first episode where everybody was like, this is awesome. And I was just like, no, this isn't fair to Bill. And, playing dumb about the NFLPA grades, not giving Eliot Wolf a real title and a contract. And now they're bad-mouthing Belichick, along with the lighthouse and all that, while they're getting poor NFLPA grades. And now they're bad-mouthing Bill behind the scenes, where they should just be like, look, go talk to other people. Go talk to Josh McDaniels, anybody who's worked for Bill, go talk to Billy O'Brien. You want to know about Bill, go talk to them. And I'm tired of it. This is similar to Kraft and Belichick after Brady left. It's just it's time to move on. Bill's out of the building. Just move on. Let him live his life. Don't trash him in a documentary and to ownership so he can't get a job if he wants to coach, and he's still a really great coach. I'm just tired of it.
Here's what I'll say, and I agree with most of what you just said, Greg. I agree with a lot of what you just said, and you can throw in the Patriots Super Bowl video that came out in January, where all of a sudden Belichick was nowhere to be found. I think they had a close up of his hand holding the Lombardi Trophy, but you didn't see Belichick at all during the 2.5, 3 minute video, whatever it was. That's so petty, it's ridiculous. That petty. No doubt about that. I agree with most of what you just said. I will say the Arthur Blank thing is pretty tough. And the reason why I went through this on my podcast, I'll give you the gist. But the relationships matter. And so with Blank and Kraft, that's a very difficult position for Robert to be in, because Blank is a very close friend of his.
Yep.
And when you think about ownership and the owners in the league, and they're close friends. So, if you put yourself in that spot of Kraft, I don't know if he was going out of his way to ruin Belichick's chances of getting that job, more so than just being honest with one of his closest friends. And people would say, well, why couldn't you, try to dance around it? Because if you dance around it and Belichick comes in, Blank's going to be pissed at Kraft, because he's going to say, wait a minute, you had an opportunity, Robert, to tell me. We tell each other everything. We're close friends. We're friends, man. This goes beyond this. This goes beyond football when it's Blank and Kraft. Okay, we'll just leave it at that. It goes beyond football. These guys are pretty close. So when you're in that spot, and you got to be a reference. Kraft was in a very difficult rock and a hard place. He had the guy who just worked for him for almost 25 years that won 6 Super Bowls. But personally, they didn't get along, and he didn't love how Belichick handled things towards the end of his tenure here. And now he's got his closest friend in the NFL, ownership-wise, asking him, what do you think about that guy? If Kraft dismisses it and doesn't answer the question, it's a red flag. If he misleads Blank, now he's misleading his closest friend. So if he buries Belichick, he's burying Belichick. So in that specific case, I don't know if he had a good way out of it. Honestly, I don't know if he had a good way out of that. I would also say, I kind of wanted your thoughts before we go here on this. Andrew Callahan highlighted the source, and it was really weird, because in the story, there was a source who talked to 2 sources, and then the original source got back to the writers. And the way it was deemed was, this source spoke to, a close friend of Kraft, spoke to the longtime Belichick confidant. It just seems like whoever was the main source of the Kraft Belichick stuff is in good graces with both guys. And I was just fascinated to try to figure out who that was. And I don't want to speculate, but I just wonder what was the connective tissue. There was connective tissue within this sourcing. And I wonder who could play both sides of that fence. It's just fascinating to me. Who is in that position that is close enough to Kraft, but also close enough to Belichick, and feels confident enough that they could speak to each of the other sources to get that information and then leak it and then leak it to the writers. Whoever that person is, they got a lot of Gerard Mayo confidence in them because that's something else.
I need that meme where the guy has all the like.
I know.
Like that just made me dizzy.
I know. It's crazy. I was just thinking about it because there can't be many people, Greg. There can't be many people in that position to speak with authority to these writers. And I'm just trying to pull it up before we go because I want to make it as specific as I can how it was written. But it had to do with, the source was, here it is. In a conversation with blank, Kraft delivered a stark assessment of Belichick's character. According to a source who spoke to two people, a close Kraft friend and a longtime Belichick confidant. So the source who gave the information to the writers was somebody who spoke to a person from each side of the fence, the Belichick fence and the Kraft fence. There can only be so many people that can do that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine there's a big group of people that can speak to and get private information from, right? I mean, this is somebody who's trusted by both sides. So I wonder who the connective tissue was. I would love to know who that person is. Just love to know. Dig it up, Greg. Go to work.
I'll go
Let
for
us
it.
know. He's Greg. I'm Nick. Everybody enjoy your weekend. We're back next week. Big week. It's officially draft week. It's going
Thank
to be
God.
here. We've been talking about it forever. Until then, be well. It's the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cap.